Well, hello, everybody. It is I, Stephen Billings, and over there, of course, to my right, right. I guess your people's right, the world's right, is Andrew Cabral. Man, there he is.
Indeed, indeed. We are back here for a bit of a special edition type of
Sure,
thing here for
you
Chasing
know,
Labels.
it's boutique labels have limited editions and their standard editions. Well, this is a limited edition episode.
Very much
Uh,
so. I
yeah,
like the way you
yeah.
work that in.
One copy. There is one
Mm,
copy of this. Um,
like the Holy
and
Grail.
let me say before we get into this, it's weird looking at you right now. You're not wearing any sports attire at
Well,
all.
well, a little behind the scenes thing. I don't like to wear the same thing every single time because
Sure.
I feel that people would notice that. So I abruptly change right before
Ah,
uh
during the
the
intro,
yeah.
you turned it.
I've
You
I've
changed all.
you know
Yeah.
how some like Superman would go into the booth, like he'd see somebody getting attacked, he'd go in the booth and then quickly change. It's kind of like that.
You do wear glasses.
I have glasses, but I
Yeah,
mostly wear contacts.
I know when you're Superman, which is most of the time on the show. Exactly.
Indeed, indeed,
Exactly.
didn't even think of that.
Yeah.
Thing is, when I used to wear glasses, people would call me Clark Kent, which is
Mm,
nice.
that is nice.
That's a nice reference.
Even though you look more like Lex Luthor.
Very
Um.
much so. I
So yeah.
wish I had his brain. I wish I had his money.
Well, you keep doing this podcast. It probably will not happen. But
Right,
let's
right. I'll
let's
have
let's
one or the other.
yeah. Well, let's get you might become evil. But let's get into what we're here for. We are doing a special episode here of Chasing Labels. We're doing an interview, an old friend, somebody that I've said in the past. He was very much an inspiration for me to even get into podcasting. With his, podcast Criterion Now, which still exists out there, still doing Criterion Now, but he also has tons of other things he's doing now. He has his project Cinejourneys that he does, and he's also got this new venture here that we're here to talk about today.
Right. He
He
will
is
be
writing a new book.
Yes, I'll say he'll
Yeah,
be diving into all of that and a
yeah.
bit of Chasing Labels lore. He is the first ever guest we had on Chasing Labels
What?
ever. If you go back
Wow,
into the archives, episode 4 is the is when he first appeared.
wow. Well, that's I. Thanks for looking back, man. I wouldn't have.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
I
wouldn't have
did
been.
that right now off the top of my head.
Cool.
So, you're welcome.
Could be wrong. Could be wrong. But without further ado, we are bringing back Mr. Aaron West. What's up, man?
Hello. Well, so thank you for sharing that because I am here to collect my royalties, guys. So all this
Shit.
this money you've made. No, I'm kidding.
Yes,
Is
you
it,
will
Yeah,
get a
we had
nice
where we're like what
percentage.
150 something episodes in.
Yes.
about
It's
10
a penny,
cents?
about 10 cents. I'll send it to you PayPal. I guess.
Yes.
Okay. But it's nice to have you back, man. It's been a minute.
It's great seeing you both. Yeah, it literally has been, well, okay, not literally, but more than a minute. Lots of minutes.
Lots of minutes.
Mm.
But you've
And
been
yeah,
busy. You've been busy, and you've had some a lot of things you've been going through. But you've picked yourself up, man, and you've been running for a minute now.
for a minute
Another
again.
amounts of minutes, yeah.
Yeah, we're measuring everything in minutes tonight. That's how we
Mhm.
fly. That's how we roll. Yeah, no, I love this kind of thing, and you've seen what we built, and Jill Blake. If you don't know her,
Yeah.
she says hi. She can't make it tonight, but she and I are great partners in crime. So we built a business. She's editing this book that I'm writing. Yeah, I'm writing a book. It says author. That's a long story, but I do have a book, an old book. So I guess author is fine, but soon to be author, film author is probably
Well, we're
more
going ahead and
apropos.
predicting the future here. So,
I'm kind of committed, I'm I'm asking for money, so that's yeah.
Yeah.
What do they call it? Texas Hold? I'm all in. Yeah. So
Exactly.
yeah. If
Yeah,
I
and
don't produce, I lose a hand. So
exactly. And because I know when you started before you started Cinejourneys, you reached out to me and you wanted to talk about the idea, and you said you were going all in. You said, I'm going to quit my job. I'm going to, just dedicate my life to just films, which is awesome. And from what
that's
you've told
right.
me, it's working out. It's working out pretty good, right?
Yeah. No, wow, that is going back a ways, and yeah, we did talk then, and I made you sign something, so that's we actually didn't tell anybody
Yeah, yeah,
really until we put the website up.
yeah,
Well, we kind of gave hints, but like there was always something new.
yeah,
There's still some things that we haven't revealed, but mostly
yeah.
everything is out there. We have people teaching classes now. Yes, Stephen, you're one of the so I was one of the first on your show, maybe the first. I don't. We'll check with the archivist,
Mm.
but you were one of the first to hear the idea. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. It was. It was. I was humbled that you even wanted to hear my opinion. I was
Well, he
like, "You
told me
want my opinion on this?"
he said it
Uh,
was terrible. It sucks, and I was just
and then
like,
I
you
was
know
really
what,
mean to him, and
Stephen?
then he didn't talk to me for like 2 years.
Yeah, I'm just going to do it anyway. So
Well, you know,
yeah.
it's. I think. I mean, I think if I remember our conversation, I basically said I thought it was a great idea. And because if you're teaching people about cinema, there's no wrong there.
Mhm.
It's only about asking people to pay for something, and if and you're obviously you, Jill, and everybody else that's involved are very educated in film, so you really have something to offer, and it's really worth people's time, I think, and money. So,
Thank you. Yeah, it's not all we don't. It's not all membership, but
sure,
obviously we
sure,
have. If you quit your job, you have to get some money. I don't know if you've been to the grocery store lately. You're not probably not going to find eggs. Uh, so yes,
yeah,
we'll work for eggs these days. But yeah,
exactly,
it has to be profit, but also we also want to deliver a great experience. People enjoy the calls. Yeah, I won't mention names, but just somebody just last week joined a call under some difficult circumstances, and it was just because they didn't want to miss it. They tune in for that community. So
yeah,
so yeah, it's fun. And
that's
then we
cool,
have classes coming up, like the big one was Imogen Sarah Smith. She's doing Palin Pressburger. We
it's
have
awesome,
Derek Smith. We have a Francesca Caracini, who is a professor for the University of Italy, Milan, Italy, University of Milan, and we have some others. That's what we can't tell you yet, but some people some people you like that are
awesome.
doing some stuff. Yeah.
Love it. Love it, man. But let's get into what we're here to talk about specifically. And that is this project you're still working on. And that is your new book, the A24 New Wave, which if you don't know what A24 is, it's of course is become even though they're a smaller company, they've become one of the biggest, I'd say biggest players in film right
Mhm.
now when it comes to not only their what they're putting out being popular in popular culture, but also on the awards front, getting a lot of attention there as well. So tell us about what drew you to this project, wanting to, because you could have written about so many different things in film, but you chose this company to put around your book. So tell us about the journey to that.
So good choice of words. First off, I've never heard it's called A24. I've always heard it called A24. So that's
I like to make sure that it gets sometimes
yeah.
like if you speak too quickly with one word, I like it's like when I'm like typing, like when you get the automated messages on somewhere and you're like, please tell us your social security. So you don't say 200 and something I
Right,
say
right.
each number. So I'm just saying.
Mm.
Well, I recorded a promo for something, and I called myself having a name with it starts with an A. I said, "Hi, I'm A24" several times, so it's at the tip of my tongue. But yeah, great question. I think a lot of it came out of what we built. So
Yeah,
we have what we call journeys, and so Jill and I each month will approach a topic. We'll put together calls. We'll put together materials. And I have a film studies background, a history background, so A24 films came up, just in and plus I'm just watching new movies. A24 is everywhere. It's
yeah,
a very, very popular label. And I think a lot of it is also just, having a history looking at the business of film. And so I think Criterion now, the podcast and looking at Criterion, the collection, the disc label, I'm sure everybody that watches your show or listens to your show knows it. By the way, this is spine one of Chasing Labels limited edition, right?
I'm not gonna say that, but I mean, go ahead. But
Yeah.
maybe it might
Yeah.
be like we've
To
had
be
a
honest,
lot of interview. We've had some interviews. Okay,
I was gonna
so
say I didn't even think of
Okay.
labeling.
Well, if I'm spine 1, I'm fine with that.
Well,
But,
well,
anyway,
let's say
I'll
you
put
know
it
maybe
on
this
my
is at least
spine.
spine 50, so it's still memorable. You know, it's like
I just need to know what to tattoo later. Is all I
okay,
need.
well,
You can just send it to via
I'll
DM.
send you the number later. Yeah.
But as just watching these movies and watching movies this year. So, in fact, I'll just share that in the prologue, I even mentioned going to see Dune 2 in IMAX. And Dune 2 is, it's a franchise. It's a sequel or a remake, sequel, adaptation, whatever you want to call it. But it's a blockbuster Hollywood studio film, but it's made by a artistic director that has influences that range from Tarkovsky to Bergman to David Fincher to all sorts of things. And he had an A24 movie called Enemy, and that's his only film. But there are other, there's Blade Runner 2049, there's Arrival, there's Sicario. They're all kind of building blocks to this next phase of his career. And so I recorded actually 2 YouTube videos, which was just random ones. One, I got good old friend Mark Kearney, and I just said, hey, will you just sit with me for like 15 minutes and let me bounce this idea off you? And it was about being in a new wave movement and talking about A24 as the core of that movement. And at first it was just an idea, a thought. And then as I kind of like looked backward, of course, I've seen most of the films already, the things fell into place. And so maybe about 3 months later, I asked Rodney Wade from, he's one of our subscribers and a good friend, and did the same thing with him. I was like, let me suss this out a little more. Then I saw The Substance and Anora. And pretty much when I saw Anora is when I started writing. And I just started writing. And I thought about A24. Now, of course, there's Neon. There's lots of other labels. There's obviously we're not, if we're in a new wave movement, there's also superhero movies and Moana 2
Sure.
and all that. But the thing is, if we're in a new wave movement, or if I look at this label, it's basically a who's who of filmmaking today. And it's a certain type of filmmaking, and it draws a certain type of audience. And there is a vibe that is associated with A24. So it's kind of one of those, when you see it, this looks like an A24 film. And a lot of people make mistakes about, people saw The Substance and thought it was A24. So yeah, it was basically just an excuse to tell all these wonderful stories. And so as I wrote about like Villeneuve, for example, loved writing that chapter. Earlier today, I talked about Alex Garland, who's a fascinating guy, and plenty more. Barry Jenkins, Sean Baker, Greta Gerwig actually was probably my favorite chapter actually. But yeah, no, cool stuff. And of course, they're part of the awards conversation this year, so that'll be the end of the book, really.
Yeah, I mean, I think, what. And Andrew, you please come in whenever, if you agree with me or disagree with me. But like, I think what about A24, God, it's hard to say it like that. A24 is that I think not only is it the projects that they put out, but I think it's how that they represent themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Not through their marketing, and they have their own podcast, they have their own, they have a way of almost creating an environment, in an outlook on their product that creates like an anticipation, like how certain filmmakers can do that. Like a Christopher Nolan, whenever his movie is coming out, people kind of like, well, I'm going to go see it because it's him. Well, A24 has a trailer come up. They see it at the beginning of the trailer. They're already like, I'm in. They're interested because they know how to market their movies in a way that, and it isn't just the horror stuff. I know people very much associate with the horror side of A24, but it's their kind of dramatic indie stuff as well that I think is also finding its way into the popular culture. And it's being very successful. Of course, Moonlight is one of the biggest examples of that, which is the cover of your new book. At least that's going to be the cover, right?
That is the cover, yeah. Isn't it gorgeous?
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Yeah, I stole it right off the internet for this this thumbnail.
Please don't steal too much off the internet.
Right,
yeah,
right. And I do concur with what you're saying, Stephen. And I mean, obviously, you'll be getting into this book, the kind of the history of A24. I also do call it A24 as well. So I am also.
Thank God. Thank God.
And what is interesting is the history of that is very fascinating as well because it started off relatively small and unknown, really. A rather young company in the grand scheme of the history of movies and movie studios and all that kind of stuff. I think off the top of my head, I first started seeing A24 films 2013 is around that era, around that time.
Yep. Spring Breakers.
Spring
Yeah.
Break.
Well, I was going to say now we're also including because obviously when they first started out, I believe, you tell me if I'm wrong, they weren't necessarily producing every movie that they put out. It was
they
were just distributing films, and like things like The Bling Ring, or something like you said, Spring Breakers.
Yeah, Spring Breakers was the first for me because I saw that in the theater, and it was just like me and two of my friends, and then like one other person. Like that's how small we're talking here.
Yeah,
so Under
the Skin. Under the Skin's another big one for me.
That was that was that 2013 kind of block of like independent, like you had to be like a cool cinephile type of person to know these movies at that time, and that's kind of where they started getting. I think getting fandom is in that kind of like super cinephile type of people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then now it's grown to not mainstreamy, but you know what I'm saying? It's definitely larger now than ever before. Like just looking at the list of their films and how many they put out per year, it's massive now compared to a decade ago. Even in 2024 alone, the list is rather extensive. But Stephen, you're right. They've kind of cultivated, a fandom within, cinephiles, really.
Yeah, they had 12 movies in there for your consideration campaign last year. So, so they to answer your question, they started in 2012 is when their first movie came out. So that's not even, it's barely a decade, just a little more than a decade worth of material. And so it's really weird looking at a new company like this. So A24 was actually named after an Italian freeway. That's where they just saw, that's where they made the decision. And I can relate to this because I have that entrepreneurial spirit. I think that's kind of what you touched on, Stephen. And now I have not named anything after a highway, but I can see you name it after whatever's nearby. But their first movie actually was A Glimpse Inside the Mind of Charles Swan. I think was it the second or the third, which was directed by Roman Coppola. And came out in 2012 with the hot star Charlie Sheen, who was in Imploding at the time. He didn't even show up to the premiere. So it actually could have been gone dead before it started. They could have actually lost their shirt just on that. It was actually a good decision because Coppola was working with Wes Anderson. And I don't know if you guys have seen it, but it's basically, I don't want to use the word ripoff, but very, very deliberate homage, I'll say. It looks like a bad Wes Anderson movie is what with a bad lead. But then they got lucky with Spring Breakers. And part of with the book is I do play with the just the fact that these are art films. So Spring Breakers is a great example. Harmony Korine, for 2 years prior to Spring Breakers, he was doing art exhibitions of the Spring Break universe, down in Florida, and the commodification of it. And he used a lot of that in the film, like some of the shapes and stuff. So it's very much an art house sensibility. But if you watch the trailer, by the way, it's an amazing trailer, Spring Breakers, and that's what might have gotten you into the theater, Andrew, and lots of others. And then you're like,
time. Yeah,
I don't like this. I don't like this movie, by the way.
Thing is, Stephen and I have had this discussion for many years. I love the movie. I'm one of those people who actually love that movie.
I get what I get what the movie's going for.
I quote that movie in my real life to this day. I quoted it the other night, just to myself. And it's very much because I love the avant-garde cinema and art house cinema and stuff like that. And that's kind of the roots of A24 was very much in that regard. Even that, like we were just talking about Under the Skin, which was around that same time, super avant-garde cinema by a filmmaker who doesn't do a lot of movies, Jonathan Glazer. I think he just did his follow-up to Under the Skin recently.
Zone of Interest.
Yes.
Zone of Interest, yeah.
Zone of Interest, which is also coincidentally with A24. as well.
Under the Skin was 2013, so that's the curse of writing a book about this. You have an encyclopedic knowledge
Right.
of it, and so Jonathan Glazer had cut his teeth with. Well, he made music videos. That was also a fascinating chapter because you look at their early work and you see how that informs their later work, and Under the Skin, you can totally see that as being, kind of of course it's a book and he adapted it. Although a good friend of mine said he adapts titles, not necessarily books, and he puts his own ideas into them. But you could see that as being, I don't want to say it's like a simple film or one or two notes, but you could see it as a few concepts executed very, very well. So he did Sexy Beast, and then he did Birth, and then he didn't work for a while. I didn't make any, and that's a story in itself. But yeah, Under the Skin was proved that he had that vision, that director's vision. Now, yeah, he's almost Malikian, if you're looking for a word, in terms of his output. I think he has a new one in the works though. Now it'll probably be out in like 5 years. But yeah, one thing I do is, and I can't say how because there's permission and rights and stuff, but I have a little fun with the idea that people get fooled into going to these movies because they open at multiplexes. So I have quoted a lot of people, but one person I'll mention that I quoted was my wife's parents, who called The Witch the worst movie of all time. And The Witch opened at like, I want to say 1,200 theaters. So, and it's called The Witch. So it did get people into theaters. But the thing is, a lot of people get converted and become fans. And that's A24 is a major gateway to cinephilia. So it sticks, but not with middle America, not with soccer moms, maybe sometimes, but I don't see a lot of soccer mom Under the Skin bumper stickers.
Right, and a lot of that is, like you said, the marketing is deceptive, which all marketing is intended to be. You know what I mean? I remember seeing It Comes at Night, which was another movie that kind of brought in people from, who thought it was going to be kind of a more traditional horror film, and it very much is not. And people I remember being at the box office to buy the tickets, and then the people behind me were going to see it as well, and they had this assumption that it was going to be a more straightforward horror film. And then I'm in the theater, I'm like, man, these people must be really pissed.
There's a lot of that.
This is very slow, very methodical. It's an apocalyptic film, but it's very low key. It's very somber. It's not a virus movie like a 28 Days Later, or like The Walking Dead was kind of still big around that time. But it kind of played itself as a type of zombie film, if you will. Like that was the marketing. And it very much, that was an aspect of it. But A24 films have a sense of being more than what they say they are.
Well, as Aaron brought up, as Aaron brought up, I think that what they've have been able to, I think, associate themselves with is a lot of great and upcoming filmmakers. I think, if we just kind of ramble off a list of filmmakers they've worked with, like you said, Roman Coppola, you got Sofia Coppola, you got Harmony Korine, you got Jonathan Glazer, Denis Villeneuve, Stephen Knight, David Michôd, Kevin Smith has done a film with him.
Oh, that was a fun chapter.
Yeah.
Oh my word.
Tusk, yeah. Noah Baumbach has done a film.
Yeah. And that was very much part of the Gerwig chapter. Yeah. While we're young. And your question, and by the way, I saw a good question in the chat from Acres of Movies, but your question about producers versus distributors. So their early history really is just, I didn't see that one. Their early history really was just doing what people do in this industry, is go to festivals and try to bid against other people for the movies they want. That's how they got Tusk. That's how they got Spring Breakers and a lot of others. They actually didn't start producing until they won some Oscars. And I have a chapter called The Oscar Year, which is where they kind of broke through. And then they started producing. Their first one was Moonlight. And then they started producing a few after that. So Acres of Movies Opus, I've looked promising, but I've heard mixed things, so I'm not sure how that'll be received. Of course, I'll watch all of it, and I'll talk about all of it.
Of course, yeah.
Go
ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, he or she it looks like a female in the avatar. I had another question about interviewing, about their acquisition strategy.
Yeah.
So actually, great question. I've reached out to A24, and I've talked to. I can't really reveal who I've talked to. I have not interviewed anybody that works at A24 yet. However, I do plan to, and I think EFM, that probably means European film market. So I think that's what it means. I have not been there, but I'm aware of it. I can't really go there and write at the same time. That's the big challenge. Is they're such a new company that I have to race to get a manuscript or a first draft finished. I'm pretty close.
Yeah.
But and then I'm already working on interviews, and I have some connects probably after the Oscars, just because some people are involved.
Yeah.
And then I'll incorporate them. We're planning to publish in August, October. So yeah.
Awesome. That's fantastic.
Should have time for that. Yeah.
Now let me ask you, like, as you said, like, you're writing this book because you feel like we're in a new wave. We're part of this new wave. What is really the key factor of what you think A24 is doing that is making them unique enough in film history that they could have their own movement? It is their own movement, because that's kind of a bold thing to say, is that this one company is the head of a new movement that is worth talking about, bringing up in the history of film. So what is the contributing factors, you think?
So great question. And I'm not exactly saying that they are solely responsible. And one thing, I do go back into film history, and I do talk about other New Wave movements. A big one, of course, is the French New Wave, and that began with Cahiers du Cinema. But I also talk about the 90s independence, a little bit about foreign companies, mostly independent New Wave movements. I talk about the American New Wave, I talk about German neorealism. In fact, that might be the closest, because that actually, UFA was a big studio. So you don't see a lot of New Wave movements or film movements combined with commerce. Like, for example, people don't know who Francois Truffaut or Jean-Luc Godard released movies through, for the most part. You can go to their Wikipedia, you can find out, but that's not in the books for the most part. But in the 30s, like Gaumont and Pathé, they are part of it. UFA in Germany. So the closest, I think, is like American Independent Pictures, AIP, in the 60s, and then maybe Miramax a little bit. But the thing is, the 90s independent movement is so massive, and it basically kind of, well, we all know what happened with Miramax, and it kind of fizzled. And then you saw in the early 2000s, you saw the majors, Focus Features, Sony Pictures Classics, jumping into that space, and also other acquisition companies. Hey Ryan, everything's great.
Yeah. I was waiting for you to stop talking. I was gonna...
Sorry about that. Yeah.
Thanks, Ryan.
Ryan's like squirrel. I see Ryan. Hey, Ryan. So basically, I do think that we are in a new wave movement, and I think that's bold to say, and I think not everybody will agree with me. I hope some people write some articles about it and disagree, because I'm open to opposing thoughts. And I think that A24 is brilliant as far as how they've kind of ushered this in. But they really are, at the beginning, they leaned on existing auteurs. They got Kevin Smith, they got Harmony Korine, they got Adam Agoyan,
Sofia Coppola.
Sofia Coppola. Yeah, Roman Coppola,
not as much so.
He's got the name. He's got the name.
He does, yeah.
And then so really, I think the watershed movement, maybe Glazer but I think really The Witch was kind of the
Eggers
and Room as well. Even though I think Room is not always, it doesn't check all the A24 boxes, but it was a big success. So I think that really they allowed people. So they found new filmmakers, and they took chances on people, and some of them were big failures. If you look at some of the early films, a lot of them just did not do well. There was a partnership with DirecTV, and so they were acquiring films to premiere on that platform, and some of those worked, some of those didn't. But then eventually, I think really when they started finding the Robert Eggers, the Ari Asters, even Greta Gerwig, she can't be understated, and she inherited a lot of stuff from Mumblecore. and so did the horror films as well.
Yeah.
So there's a thing called mumble gore that Ryan is, I'm sure, familiar with, and so Ty West and even Trey Edward Schultz and some others have kind of like dabbled in there. So yeah, it's interesting. But the thing is, Neon has had 5 Palme d'Or winners, in the last decade. So it's not like they're the only ones. And Titan is very much, I would consider that part of what I'm calling the A24 New Wave, even though it's not A24.
Yeah.
So yeah, does it Creep? Yeah, good one, Creep.
Yeah.
Oh wait, is he calling me a creep?
No, maybe not this time, but I think he's talking about the movie Creep for sure. No, I think what you're saying is that even though maybe A24 is not necessarily the only ones, like you keep bringing up Neon. I think Neon is really kind of the other direct competition when it comes to this subject matter, and maybe even focus features at some points. But like, I think what it is that that A24 and other companies like them have been able to find a way to take genre cinema and independent cinema and have risen it up to a certain level that it hasn't really been there in a long time. Even in the 90s, it wasn't quite this, like, production wise. It wasn't like you weren't getting movies like this on this kind of production level that were popular with wider audiences and winning awards. And
that was kind of few and far between, because I'm thinking off the top of my head of, like 90s indie darlings. I'm thinking of Quentin Tarantino. You know what I mean?
You got Soderbergh.
Soderbergh's a big one, yeah.
Soderbergh is a big one.
That's few and far between, as you said.
Yeah.
But now you got
Greg
Eggers,
Araki.
You got so many guys that are in this box here that you're talking about that are really, Aster's, I think, one of the other big ones. Ari Aster is going to be always in the minds of people when it comes to potential awards, because he's such a visual and unique director, with Eggers and Glazer just getting nominated last year, and just like these people just keep coming out.
He won. Yeah.
So it just, I see what you're looking at. And I think I haven't looked at it into it as much as you have, but I can see where you would attach yourself to this company and say, hey, when they started making movies, there started being a movement, and, they came out of a time where everybody was watching blockbusters and they weren't even focusing on them. And now that blockbusters, and specifically, comic book films, are kind of
coming down,
they're teetering back down on a downward spiral. It's these lower, during the pandemic, these smaller movies are getting more attention. A lot of them are going straight to, VOD sometimes, and they're getting more attention at home. And
that was a big thing. Yeah, Steve, I'm glad you brought that up, because when we're talking about, A24, the films had relatively, kind of low distribution when it came to theatrical releases, because they were very much in that independent realm. And what has happened over the last several years, as we all know, people listening, watching, whatever, streaming has become massive, specifically in-home consumption of movies. I keep seeing this all the time. Large budget films go from being in the movie theater to being available at home within a 3-week span now, where it's nothing has ever been like that before. And then independent films have been getting the VOD treatment for years, or the premium VOD treatment, or whatever that is. And then, of course, like Stephen mentioned, the pandemic kind of sped up this idea of at-home streaming, at-home availability of new movies. For me, the big thing when it comes to independent cinema has always been availability for many people, because typically these smaller independent films have only been available, New York, LA, Chicago, big metropolitan areas that have indie theaters or have a lot of theaters that can, afford to put in a random indie movie that's not going to make them a lot of money. Whereas streaming has kind of opened up that game of people being able to see these movies not only when they come out, but see them faster. And, the market from theater to even home media is much faster now as well.
I think also what's happening, though, is that these movies are actually playing better in theaters, because because what's happening is
now
with the big studios, who now have, all they do is put their money into big blockbusters, and they don't make these smaller movies. When A24, that's all they do is make these smaller movies. They're the ones that have the whole market. of that type
Yeah.
of film out in the theater. You know,
Right.
Universal's not putting out movies like Green Room and you know, like they're not doing the movies. So
Green Room's a great example.
Yeah,
So Saulnier, I mean, he's now working with
Saulnier,
Netflix.
and now he's doing a bunch of stuff on streaming.
Yeah. And what's interesting is a lot of these filmmakers have graduated. So people aren't going to buy my book to read about Dune 2 or Dune 1 or Dune 2.
Or Mufasa, which Barry Jenkins did.
I'm actually, I haven't seen it yet, but I've heard mixed things, so I'll watch it. But yeah, that's the thing is Barry Jenkins is still involved in some capacity.
Yeah, of course.
And Stacey, by the way, I apologize. I forgot she said hello at the beginning. I think you go by she, but yeah, they take big swings. And so Alex Garland is a big one. Civil War, Native Harmony, Acid Mountain. I haven't I've heard a little bit about those, so I don't really know how big of swings those are, but they've taken big swings really since their inception because Trey Edward Schultz, It Comes at Night, is a horror film that is slow. A Ghost Story, David Lowery, is slow. The Green Knight is more of an Eggers style Arthurian tale, slow. So I don't want to talk too much trash about Barry Jenkins in case.
Hey, Ryan, are you going to make this movie? Because you seem to be too busy. Why don't you just make the movie?
he is too busy. He'd write this book otherwise. But yeah, they do take big swings, and so Nosferatu is a big example. Eggers is now, but the thing is, Eggers likely will come back. So Garland went to studios, and of course Garland writes and does all sorts of stuff.
Unless Eggers is going to do some Dark Crystal movie that everybody.
I think Eggers is probably good now. I think he's on his own.
His next movie is going to be called Werewolf.
Werewolf,
a werewolf film.
Werewolf.
And I think all of them, he's going to stay, I think, within this kind of A24 realm.
He wants to do all period films. He didn't want to do any modern day films.
Didn't he just have a Criterion Closet video? Where he
did, and he shouted out Colors of Pomegranate, which of course, no surprise to me, and a lot of other films. The thing with, and he was an amazing chapter to write too, and he's still at it, but Werewolf. But yeah, he's so exacting as far as, so he comes in production designer. So he was the guy people wanted in New England to be the production designer because he got every detail right, and he's so meticulous. Reading that screenplay of The Witch, it's really a great screenplay.
Do you got the big book from A24?
From A24?
I got it too.
Yeah, I got
I'm
a lot
going
of
back and forth.
books.
I'm keeping you on your toes.
Yeah, they're great.
I got the book from A24.
Yeah. No, I actually, you talked about Cinejourneys. I remember reading the Witch, reading the Witch screenplay during a journey call. I just turned off my camera and read it. So, but yeah, Eggers is a great example. Probably not a lot of people would have taken a chance on somebody that's like, okay, we need to get these people moved from England. England is in living memory, and they are excommunicated from this town. They don't speak well. They have a fucking goat. I could say fucking, right?
Of course.
Fine.
Please.
Okay.
Well, you have to call. If you knew about the stories of Charlie the goat on the set, you would use.
I did just hear that apparently it was incredibly difficult to work with.
He was the devil.
Yeah, and he said, and I think Eggers said that he probably wouldn't work with animals again or something like that.
Yeah. I know. Well, I was going to make a bad joke about another actor that I'll hold that one and save it for later. That Charlie was easier to work with, but anyway, he was they couldn't film everything they wrote because Charlie was such a bastard. And there's one scene where he's kind of like squaring off against Ralph Ineson. I forget his character. I should know this stuff, but and they actually had two people holding Charlie with I don't know, leash, reins, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. And they had to actually CGI those out so that it looked like he was just standing. And all he had to do was stand. And then there's a shot towards the end. You probably know the shot where the goat is nodding a little bit.
Yeah.
That's like a 10-second shot, but it could have been 2 minutes, and I would have loved it. I love that shot. But the thing is, the second they cut is Charlie was being an asshole again. So
that movie,
fun
we can before we end, not that we're ending anytime soon, but like before we end, we should probably talk about, all of us bring up like our favorite A24 movies. But that movie in particular still kind of creeps me out. Like if I watch that movie in the dark by myself, I'm like, yeah, the Black Phillip. No,
I
I don't.
watched. Yeah,
I don't want to be around that. Yeah.
I watched that movie. It was one of those kind of a late night by myself type of watches. Kind of the witching hour 3 a.m. type of watch for me.
The
It
witching
definitely
hour.
gives gives it the environment of eeriness that movie's going for.
And I saw that in theaters, and I remember leaving the theater, people being like, "That was so boring," and I'm like, I left with like a high.
Yeah.
I was like, "Damn, that was a good movie." I was like, "That was so awesome,"
I
like
remember the buzz around that film,
Yeah.
where like movie where it was kind of like you were saying, Aaron. It was
Mhm.
kind of that moment that was kind of cross pollinating between cinephile people like indie films and art house films, and the mainstream was kind of picking up on the buzz of
Yeah.
that movie because there was a buzz about The Witch. And it had come out earlier in the year, if I remember that year.
Mhm.
I think it was
Yeah, I think
2016.
it was the summer. If I to answer Ryan's question, I'm actually about the butter and the dress more than the living deliciously. Butter is really, you can't
Yeah.
take butter for granted. It's
Well,
pretty important.
That's
Uh,
it is. You know what I love, whenever you see a movie that nobody else has caught on to yet, and you like
Mhm.
you like before
Yeah.
anybody else has started typing about it on social media and saying how great it is that you've seen it. I had the same. Now this is an A24 movie, but John Wick. Before John Wick
Yeah.
became the thing it was, I remember seeing it open in night. Actually, it was like earlier than that, and watching it and being like, this is badass. And then it became a global phenomenon after that. I was like I love seeing something before anybody else and already knowing that it's like this is about to blow up. Like just knowing it, And that's what it was for The Witch too.
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
this isn't just gonna get thrown away. I was like, this is something here. And Moonlight. Moonlight was another one. When Moonlight came
was
out,
well the big one. Well, again, they got really lucky with getting that deal. I guess making the deal. They made it at Telluride with was it Blumhouse Pictures? I think it was. And yeah, they just took a chance on this guy Barry Jenkins, who had made a very speaking of which, Mumblecore. He had made a Mumblecore movie in San Francisco about probably 8 years prior, I think.
Criterion. It's on the Criterion Collection.
It is, Medicine for Melancholy.
Yeah, Medicine for Melancholy.
Yeah.
And so it worked out, and that was another great. The one thing that's great about a lot of these filmmakers, and not all of them, is they love to talk, and that's part of the promotion mechanism. So they do tons of interviews. They do podcasts.
Yeah.
And and that's one thing with new media. There's not a lot of books about Barry Jenkins or Robert Eggers yet. There are a couple about Villeneuve, or a couple about Gerwig, although some of those are like the Barbie playset book or something. Which I'm
funny, Ryan. No, it says Moonlight, doesn't it? Yeah. No,
that was fun to write about because everybody knows that story, and what new can you tell about it? So, but yeah, Barry Jenkins was a huge talent, and
they also on top of that support physical media because they also put their own limited edition physical media out.
Nice transition, because I was thinking about that the whole time. For those of you listening, if you go to the A24 website, you go to their store on there, and it's most of the things are still exclusive to there, but they're slowly now starting to make their way into certain brick and mortar stores.
I saw the Midsommar limited edition at a Walmart.
They're at Walmart. They have Marcel the Shell with shoes on.
Yeah.
They have, like you said, Midsommar. I think they have a few other ones off the top of my head that I can't remember.
And they
there's quite a few. Yeah.
They did just.
I think it depends on the store.
Yeah, they introduced that new subscription service too, that AAA thing. Yeah.
So if you got in that early, you lucked out because they doubled the price, and then they said you're getting $5 a month. So basically, if you've been there since the beginning, you're still paying $5 a month, and you're getting $5 a month. So I just pre-ordered Baby Girl, and it was basically half price. And what's cool is it's streaming. In fact, I'm going to watch it after we record because I haven't seen Baby Girl yet. I understand there's something about milk. I'm just here for the memes, is what. But
Nicole Kidman is having a bit of a renaissance.
Yeah.
What is interesting is we're talking about them, and then because they're, I guess you could consider them a boutique label when it comes to physical media because of the types of films they're putting out and the type of specific editions they're putting out.
Mhm.
And yeah, they've got a lot of great things in their catalog because it's typically the only way you can get a lot of their current stuff is
Mhm.
through these exclusive editions. I'm thinking of, like you just mentioned, Baby Girl, Heretic, which just came out. A movie that I really
Sing
loved over the
Sing.
last few years, After Sun. You can only really get
Yeah,
a
that's a
Blu-ray
great one.
from them, or 4Ks from them. Now, and they also do come at a premium price for many people,
Mhm.
which is kind of that boutique type of thing. You know, in the boutique world, you do pay a little bit more for these types of labels and things like that. Um, but yeah, it's very interesting how they've kind of incorporated physical media within their, within
Yeah,
their
and like
model.
and like
You
we
know,
said, they come out with you know, merch items that are like
Mm,
from the movies or the like I talked about earlier, the screenplay books, which I think are
Mhm.
really cool. I really I want to get as many of them as I can. I just really love that.
I think I have all of them.
Okay.
So they really tap into the collector mentality, and again, that's kind of where Criterion, seeing that collector mentality. Now they do it with DVDs, and I would argue that they are actually one of the top boutique labels right now because they're putting out some of the best movies right now, and their releases are stellar. And
Mhm.
early on in their history, they would partner with Lionsgate for the most part for physical releases,
yes.
and there was still a lot of directors' commentaries or no, not really scholars. So it's not like some of the boutique labels that Ryan and we talk about. Um, but yeah, great. And they had a limited Krisha edition, which I am kicking myself for not buying because it is so expensive. And if anybody wants to donate it to me, I
Yeah.
might even give you royalties on the book. At this point,
Mm.
it's pretty expensive.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, the thing is, their 4K editions, they have the big. If I could probably another occasion we can talk about their physical media if you'd like, but it's not just that. They have the books. Talk to Me. You can actually buy the hand from
Yeah. Yeah.
the ceramic hand. I have not purchased that yet. I don't. I'm not that much of a collector, but people also trade their postcards. And so they send out postcards, and those sell for a high price. So, um, yeah, so we're going to do postcards. I don't know if you've seen our midsummer art, and we have the Black
Yeah.
Phillip art
Yep.
coming out.
It's
So we're
beautiful.
going to do postcards of those. Yeah, and the cover, of course.
Yeah. Well, that brings me back to the next thing I wanted to say was so the project for the A24 New Wave is still being funded. You're still hoping
Hmm.
to get more donations towards this project to let this be launched at the best of its ability. And so tell them a little bit about what where they have to go. And I got the link in the description already to where you
Sure.
have to go.
Am I allowed to share?
Yeah, yeah, of course.
Um, let's see. I'll just share Kickstarter. So yeah, no. Well, I wouldn't call it donations. I would call it pre-orders. So we're funded. That's one thing I'll say is when you're running a Kickstarter, so we're 120 something percent is what I think this is. So when you're running a Kickstarter, all your friends avoid you until you're funded, and then because you're going to always ask for money, and you always should be asking them for money because
Yeah.
books are expensive. So here's the trailer. We did cut a trailer, and yeah, we have met our goal. We still have a little less than 3 weeks left. We have some stretch goals. There's the cover. And then here's the art. We're actually going to
Love
put
it.
this in the book. Yeah. And we want to do this full color because, I don't want this in black and white. I think that just would not do it justice. So, but color is expensive. So we will need a little more fundraising for that. But what we're doing is nobody wants just stickers. I'm surprised. Cheap $5 stickers, but yeah, we have the pre-orders of the book, and then signed books, and then yeah, some other things. One thing we have the May Queen pack, and we have a mix and match pack, so that has all 4 illustrations. In fact, I'll go to the update I sent out yesterday, and so here's a draft of a sketch of Everything Everywhere,
Nice.
Third Eye, and then here is Sacramento. So as you can see close up, I love if you can. You see. Can you see what the cast
Yeah,
says?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So we'll be putting those on T-shirts, and we're going to sell those, but not never as cheap as what we're selling them on the Kickstarter. So that's just basically we're funding the development of the book, and then we will sell it for what market value. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So yeah, if any listeners or viewers want to help us out and get early access to the book before we put it in stores, this is the way to support us.
Well, I'm going to support you. I'm going to definitely get me a physical copy. I'm all, we are a physical media advocates here. That's a shout out to Ryan's zine, the Physical Media Advocate.
There you go. Yeah.
So we are advocates for all that. So I'll definitely be backing you on that, sir.
Thank you,
as
Steven.
long as you better get that image in color. If it comes in black and white,
well, the stretch goal for colors is $10,000. So we have to. But the thing is, we have a little ways to go, and we had. Well, the thing is, this was the worst time to launch a fundraising campaign. Like the Monday we released it was the terrible fires, and we just did not feel right asking everybody for money when there's GoFundMe's. Everybody's sharing those. And of course, I try to avoid the topic of politics. And by the way, writing a book is a really good solution for that, and doing a Kickstarter, because basically at the end of the day, I can catch the news and then I can, can't forget it, but I can put it out of my mind. But the political, people are losing their jobs, people that work for the government, that sort of thing. So, are in fear of losing their jobs. So I understand that people are tightening up right now. So, but yeah. We are funded. The book will happen. I think it'll happen in color. We'll see. Like I said, color is expensive, but and we'll also have the posters, the shirts, the bookmarks, all that stuff.
Fantastic, man. Well, Ryan's already read some excerpts, and he says that it's fantastic, and that you should be all over this. So, and as usual, Ryan's always fully supportive of anybody doing anything, because he's that positive.
Ryan's been he's had my back on this. So
that's why he's to me. I think Ryan. I know this is an interview to you, but Ryan's taking this over for some reason. Ryan's one of the best people in this space, because he's so busy, but he still has time for others. So, but
he shows up to stuff like this. So thank you, Ryan. Yeah. And I'll be honest, and Ryan is, we have a podcast that's on the Someone's Favorite Productions network. So I'm proud to be on that. And Ryan was actually the first backer, believe it or not. And he did read a little bit of it. And I haven't sent really anything to anybody, because just the mentality to write a book. When you first draft, you just got to get that stuff on paper.
Exactly.
And so there were certainly typos in what you read, Ryan. I didn't even proofread it. But writing always gets better.
He's a journalist himself these days.
He is.
So he knows that it's, he knows. So
if he had told me it was totally crap, well, we might not be here tonight. So, but
he would never do that.
He gave me a lot of confidence. I think that Ryan would be honest with you. If he really was,
too. Yeah.
If you're sinking all this money into this project and all this time, I think he would say, "Hey, maybe you should podcast."
He would not say it was crap, is what I'm saying. He would give you constructive criticism and help you. That's what he would do.
Yeah. You're right. Yeah. Thank you, Ryan.
But yeah, I mean, I think this is exciting, man. What I love is that, and I thought about it earlier today, because I got some other people we're gonna be doing an interview with later this month, with our friend Jonathan Matthews, who's doing a documentary on physical media. We'll be talking with him, and I just love that all the people around us in this space, Andrew, are doing exciting stuff.
Indeed.
We're friends with we're friends with all these cool people.
Very much so. It's a lot of good, interesting information too, and I'm glad that people are documenting what's going on.
Yeah.
Because sometimes when you're in this type of relatively niche space, it's like you're trying to are people noticing what I'm noticing?
Yeah.
And also they noticing other things as well when it comes to the trends within the movie world, specifically the niche part of the movie world.
Hey, as long as they remember Chasing Labels when they do the history on
or the
podcasting in the boutique label space, when they do that story,
exactly.
As long as Chasing Labels.
Yeah, because I keep mentioning these things. You know what I mean? So why not? Yeah, at least put us in the acknowledgements of all
Oh,
this.
geez,
Um,
beast.
but
Yeah, you're there. Well, if there's a film book Oscars, maybe they'll create a category. If I'm so lucky to
perhaps
win, you guys will be on my speech. And I said that, so
Nobel
so.
Prize, Pulitzers, they give
But
out
of course, all
Peabodys.
those speeches are like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I forgot to thank so many people." So yeah, there's
We feel lucky to just be having conversations with certain people doing this. We've
yeah.
gotten very lucky ourselves, but it's a it's a community that we just love being a part of. So it's I just love seeing everybody doing ambitious stuff. I wish I
I,
had the time.
mhm.
Well,
And
yeah,
that's kind of why I like A24 is I take big swings.
Yeah,
Writing this book is a big swing. And
exactly.
frankly, and telling people is a big swing. I had to get a certain word count before I was comfortable actually disclosing this. And unfortunately, I write pretty fast. And I felt good about the material that I was able to talk about it. And also, I realized that if I didn't write fast, that A24 was going to pass me up. In fact, that's still something, where I end it is still an open-ended question because I have to publish
exactly.
it.
I was
Yeah.
actually was wondering in my head if there was a specific cutoff point that you were just like, okay, I'm only going to write up to this time frame because, as we know in the world of movies, it just keeps going.
Mhm.
There's no they don't take breaks. They really don't take breaks ever.
So the
Um,
Oscars is that time, and
Gotcha, gotcha.
and that kind of plays in the narrative. And I don't know, well, nobody knows, except for maybe a Price Waterhouse accountant who hopefully has not been drinking and taking selfies with celebrities. But yeah, I don't know if The Brutalist will win. I don't know if Honora will win. I'm pretty sure Amelia Perez won't win. Amelia Perez is not in the book, believe it or not. They are not part of the New Wave movement. No offense to people who like that movie, but yeah, not there yet. But the ending will be basically the winner. And frankly, the ending has already kind of been written because Honora won the Palme d'Or, and Sean Baker is a tastemaker, a big champion of film. So he's already in the epilogue. And I'll share this. It's not widely shared yet. Is that we're planning? Some of it depends on the fundraising. We're planning to have an Honora image right before the epilogue in that same what you saw with the May Queen. We don't know
Yeah,
what it's going to look like. That's coming soon, but well, I say soon with the book. Probably it won't be the Kickstarter campaign. Um, but yeah, no, that feels like a good endpoint. Fortunately, we have a website and we have the ability to post things there, and the website is very flexible. So there's also a digital access. So when people get to like page, I don't know, 5, I'm making this up because we haven't done the layout yet. They will get like a password and a website they can go to. They can't click actually the book. That would be really cool if I could make that happen. They click a physical book into a website. But then I plan, of course, I'm committing myself to years and years of keeping up with this label, and the story will change. And so I'll probably have new editions, but they'll always be updated online. So
fantastic, man.
mhm.
Well, yeah, you signed your life away, so it's to to
Well,
Criterion and now A24, and but
did
you
I tell
love
you
it. I can
what my next book's going to be?
no.
I don't mind sharing this because if anybody else writes it, I don't care. They'll source me. Um, I want to write a book on the Criterion Collection. So
I could have seen that coming. I should have known.
You should have known. I mean, there's enough material. They've
Oh,
been
for
around.
sure.
yeah.
What are they?
And I know enough people. Yeah.
Yeah,
Now Ryan
been around for
might
40
get
years.
started. He's like, okay, spine 1
Mm-hmm.
at his keyboard.
Mm-hmm.
No, Ryan, anybody is more than welcome to that. I would gladly support them and promote them. But yeah, I know this won't be my last one, and I'm kind of burying the lead. We're also creating our own press with Cinejourneys. So I know Ryan has his own press. Some others do, but it's hard to get published, and so we want to help out some others with this. Yeah, you're right. It will take a couple of years.
Talk about information. I mean, like a book on Criterion. I mean, like I said, there's 40 years worth of information, and they don't
There's a lot
stop.
of sources. Yeah,
Yeah,
a lot of stuff to look up there. But fortunately, I do know some people that would tell me where to look. So yeah, look out for a crowdfund for that in about around the time that meteor or the asteroid's going to hit the Earth. Please donate to our Patreon or
Please, you don't need
Kickstarter.
the money.
yeah. By
Just help you
by
finish the
that
book.
point, there'll be thousands of entries into the Criterion Collection to talk about in terms of.
Yeah.
Two A24 books too. So I'm I'm the pot's all in, like I said earlier. And Ryan's saying the Scorsese chapter will be 812 pages.
Mm-hmm.
Scorsese is really, his dynamic is really not part of A24. You mentioned John Wick, and I was thinking, well, that comes from Yakuza and gangster movies. That tradition. They tried that, and it didn't go well. So that's another story. But
yeah. Well, awesome, man. I love it. And as I said earlier, let's just for a second, what are some of the favorite, to cap it here, what are some of your favorite A24 films?
why don't you guys go first?
Okay.
I have too many. Yeah. Let me open my book.
It is tough. Uncut Gems is definitely one of the more recent ones. I think I remember my theater experience with that one. Just being nervous out of my mind, like the whole time, just tense because of everything Adam Sandler was doing in that movie. I'm just like, no, stop, please. The Lighthouse, Eggers Lighthouse, is another big one. Speaking of artsy films, that's one of their big ones. And I think it really cemented, after The Witch, cemented Eggers as like somebody to keep your eye on. Let me not take Andrew. Say a couple.
Well, I mentioned After Sun already. It's a movie I think about kind of on a weekly basis now.
Yeah.
A couple of other ones. Lady Bird, I thought was really good. That Greta Gerwig film. That was the film that really made people aware of Greta Gerwig as a filmmaker,
as a director. Yeah,
and
she's one of the. I would say she's among the best working directors today. I think.
I don't disagree.
She owns that. Yeah.
I mean, what's interesting is she's kind of making the transition now to mainstream, working on Chronicles of Narnia film for Netflix of all places. Eighth Grade, the Bo Burnham film.
That's a great one. Yeah.
I think is kind of an evergreen film in terms of dealing with its themes of anxiety amongst young people at a very specific age. There's that. Oh man, there's so many of them. Even something like we mentioned Under the Skin.
We haven't even said anything about Yorgos Lanthimos.
Yeah,
who is one of the biggest auteurs of these. I mean, whether it's Killing of a Sacred Deer or The Lobster, all these films that he's been doing is mostly they're all A24 movies, ain't they?
Those two,
no,
yes.
only those two. Yeah,
okay.
So I've already written most of that chapter, but the thing is, Poor Things was not the favorite. Was not Kind of Kindness, which I'm kind of trying to pretend doesn't exist. It's not. The Lobster,
what's wrong with that movie?
The Lobster was a huge movie for them, and helped put them on the map. It's in the trailer. In our trailer, there's a little, and I'm really proud of the scene we chose and the way we chose that. Gerwig. So the thing is, Gerwig was so informative and enlightening to research because she always had the talent, and we're three guys here. I'm not going to say that she was held back by guys because she did get her chances. She co-directed a movie with Swanberg, and she wrote some movies too. I think she had that creative energy right away. So yeah, she's amazing, and I think she, especially with Baumbach, she was an auteur before she was actually a director. I love Lady Bird too, Andrew. I think it's one of my favorites. I'm a big Ari Aster fan. I'm a big Robert Eggers fan. So those are the go-to. So
there's some hidden gems amongst.
Well, I would say like Past Lives, and I agree with After Sun is a great one. Past Lives,
Good Time,
Moonlight.
Good Time.
I love Good Time. Yeah,
I really like the Farewell. With Awkwafina. That was a I saw that in the theater.
David Lowery with Ghost Story.
I'm actually working on David Lowery's chapter right now. I'm leaving town in a couple days, and I'm hoping to finish the chapter by then. But The Green Knight is actually one of my favorites. I think that one's up there. I don't nothing against a Ghost Story. I like Ghost Story quite a bit, but it's a big jump from Pete's Dragon to go to The Green Knight. But I think The Green Knight's a spectacular film. I can't wait to
remember Swiss Army Man. The farting corpse movie.
Yeah.
That was just talked about because it was about it had Harry Potter in it farting and he was dead. That was enough for people to want to check it out.
I saw that in the theater and it was only me and my friend and nobody else was there. Like it was so under the radar here.
I remember
Yeah, I
seeing the
remember.
trailer, yeah, and thinking, okay, are these guys
All
going to win Best Picture someday?
Yeah.
I can't remember their pronouns, but I think they might be they them. Either way, they made a fantastic movie, and Swiss Army Knife is not that fantastic movie. I mean, I think I like it a lot, but it's not up on the upper echelon. But it's super funny and it's super
Yeah.
quirky, and they have a lot of that too.
It's
You know,
part of that
Louise,
vibe that A24 has,
yeah.
Another movie that
cultivated
for me that has always been is The End of the Tour.
into the tour.
Yeah,
That
I
with
wrote
Jason
about that one.
Segel. Um,
That's an interesting one because I mean, there's some mixed opinions about that from people because some people thought it was exploitative. David Foster Wallace's estate was not happy with it, but I think it works, and you know, it also won a lot of awards. So maybe not Oscars, but Indie Spirits and festival awards and that sort of thing. Yeah, really, really good film.
Yeah. We could keep going on, man. There's a lot of, interesting, like you said, hidden gems in there.
Ex
And
Machina.
ones that were more popular than others. Some were flops, but like The Disaster Artist. I mean, I love The Room, and we got that the story of how The Room was made. I mean, they did a lot. They've done so many interesting, wide ranging stories from little indie things like that to like The Green Knight, which is a big epic story. You know, even for this smaller studio that's kind of become a behemoth in its own way. You know, so. Yeah, I'm excited for the book, Aaron, and
Thanks, Steven.
I hope it keeps going smoothly for you, and that you can get this out and we can all enjoy it. So
I will. Hey, Ryan put a question in there. Name an A24 film that would have been interesting. So I'm going to say Robert Eggers does Swiss Army Knife. So it would be a
swap filmmakers
period appropriate, period appropriate farts. So they'll fart like they did in the 18th century. Or
I think Ari Aster should do 8th Grade.
Yeah,
because Ari Aster, like what's the film he just did recently with Joaquin Phoenix?
Oh, come on.
Beau's Afraid. Beau's Afraid.
Oh,
yeah.
So think
Very
Beau's Afraid.
surreal, yeah.
Beau's Afraid, but 8th Grade. There you go.
I'm glad Ryan mentioned Green Room. So I put Green Room as at the top of the horror, and I have an early horror chapter and a late horror chapter. So Green Room is a big film in the early horror. So I would like to see Daniels make Green Room. See what that turns out like.
Everybody's farting green farts. It'd be weird.
We could have some fun with that.
Yeah.
That'll be the next podcast.
All right. Well, everybody, the link is in the description to go support this book. And please keep an eye out. Go over there. Check on the updates. Of course, all the other stuff. Please tell everybody all the other stuff that's going on with you before we head out.
Sure. Just real quick. We are doing Cinejourneys. We're in Christopher Guest month. So I just rewatch Best in Show, which is always a pleasure. And then we're going to do the Frankenheimer trilogy next month. So that'll be fun. And there's a Japanese New Wave class starting next month. And we're preparing for Imogen's class on Palin Pressburger, which will start in May, I believe. And we'll be talking when I get back in town. We'll have a little something with Imogen. She's a lot of fun, but great, very, very smart. So
of course.
Yeah.
Fantastic, man. Well, everybody, thanks for the people tuned in live, and thanks for all the questions in the chat. And this will, of course, also be on the audio feed as well. So with that said, everybody have a good night, and we'll see you on the next chat and Chasing Labels and all that stuff. Have a good night.
Great seeing you guys.
Yep. You too. Thanks, Aaron.